This episode of And Now You Know has been sponsored by Tronix Security Systems. Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of And Now You Know. For whatever reason, we all seem to be very curious about the inner workings of organized crime. Organized crime seems to have many different facets and is played out in many different ways. Hi, I'm Lou Beccaria, the host of And Now You Know. Today, we're going to provide you with some insight into organized crime of the Latin American flavor and the vehicle that it employs of stealing and selling rare and exotic animals. We'll learn this through our discussion with local author John Dobbin, a retired law professor from Villanova University who specializes in writing novels about organized crime in different cultures. So sit back, pull up a chair, and enjoy the show. Hi, John. It's great to have you back with us once again. I know you've been here twice before to talk about your other novels, and can't thank you enough for coming to talk about Fatal Odds. So before we get into the book, I understand that you're recently retired?
Fairly recently, right.
So tell us about that and it's not a new career, but it's a second career.
In a sense it is. They overlapped by about 25 years, as a matter of fact. I was teaching at Villanova Law School for 47 years, wow. And I can't believe it because I thought I started yesterday. But about 27, 28 years ago, while I was still teaching, believe it or not, my wife wanted to take tennis lessons. And I wanted to go with her, and she took the lessons at the mainline night school. And I wanted to be with her, drive her, and so what am I going to do during the hour that she's wanging a ball back and forth? So I checked the catalog, and the only thing of vague interest was a creative writing course.
Wow.
So I jumped in, and it's strange how the Lord works. I had an assignment. The assignment was write a 5-paragraph piece on the 5 senses. Walk in the woods, and that seemed reasonably boring. So I thought, you know what would be more fun? I think I'll try to write a mystery. I'll make the detective a blind law professor, and that way he can focus on the other 4 senses intensely to solve the crime. So I wrote it, and I handed it in, and the teacher, oddly enough, liked it, and she said, gee, you should send this to Mike Shane's Mystery Magazine, which was one of the existing short story magazines at the time. So I sent it. 3 weeks later, lightning struck. They bought it. And I have no idea why, because I had no idea what I was doing. It was pure chance. But once that happens, you are absolutely hooked. And all of a sudden, the second career started.
Yeah.
So I started, then after that, I wrote short story after short story. I collected enough rejection slips to paper our house. I couldn't get my name in the phone book after that. But I kept at it. And I finally sent one to Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine because I figured if I'm going to get a rejection slip, it should have class, and that's class. And I did, I got the rejection slip. But the odd thing was, this was about the 4th story I had sent to Eleanor Sullivan, God love her, she was the editor then, and she hand wrote in the margin, "Don't quit, you're getting close." So I wrote one more and she bought it, and she bought the next 20.
Wow.
But after that, I finally decided, hey, it's time to climb Mount Everest and get serious about this. So that's when I started writing the first novel. And that first novel took about 2 years, as did each one of them. And the first one was Neon Dragon, which, by the way, thank God, this is the 5th. Fatal Odds is the 5th in this series. It's a legal thriller series. But going back, it's almost as if success is going back, and thank God that one is being produced as a major motion picture.
Wow.
Right now.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. That's exciting.
Boy, I'll tell you, my wife Lois and I we couldn't be more excited about it. We have a wonderful producer. She was with New Line Productions, and then she and 3 other producers split off, and her office is in London, and 2 others are in Hollywood. She got in touch with us. She got in touch with our publisher, and she asked if we could meet in New York. So I got a call from our publisher, Bob Gusson, and actually I came home from work one day, and Lois said, gee, Bob called, and he's either very happy or very upset, and I couldn't tell which, but he wants you to call him right back. And when I talked to him, he said, there's this wonderful producer, you're going to love her, but she wants to meet you. Can you come up to New York? I said, I'm on my way now. I'm out the door. And we met in New York, had the most wonderful lunch. I'll never forget our meeting because Bob and Pat flew up from, that's my editor and publisher, flew up from Florida. We met at the restaurant in New York. We got there first. Eileen is always 10 minutes late, the producer. So when she came in, Bob and Pat got up and I got up and they hugged her and so on. And then Bob said to her, and I'll never forget this line, Bob said, Eileen, this is Jack Dobbin. And she just kind of looked at me, and I didn't know where this was going. She said, you are my favorite author.
Wow.
And I grabbed her and I hugged her, and it's been a love affair ever since.
That's really a special moment.
She's wonderful.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're at the stage now where I don't want to write a screenplay. It's a whole different art. So she had a screenplay written by her favorite screenplay writer in London. And we got it in good shape. And what's wonderful about this, Lou, is that usually I have friends. Lisa Scottoline, for example, is having got an option to have one of her movie, books made into a movie. But with Lisa, as with most people, they came and they offered her an option and a check. She takes the check and they say, bye-bye, that's all we want to hear from you. And they go off and do whatever with your novel. But not in this case. Eileen wants us to be part of every move.
That'll be a good experience for you.
It will.
So let's get into Fatal Odds.
Yeah.
Okay. In the introduction of our show, I kind of described, this being kind of a Latino organized crime, and you've kind of delved into organized crime in different cultures in the course of your different books.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this one. Why did you kind of focus in on the organized crime in the Latino culture, and also about, endangered species and endangered animals?
Okay, Lou, those are two separate. Let me start with the organized crime gang. I love organized criminals. I just love them.
I guess because of your law background.
Well, maybe that's it. I clerked for a federal judge at a time when the U.S. attorney was prosecuting every mafia from the chief on down. All the cards were falling. It was like a house of cards tumbling. And I got to see and meet many of the Italian mafia in Boston, as well as the undercover agents and so on. Yeah. And I love them. They're the most wonderful people to write about. I don't want to have them to dinner, but they're the most wonderful people to write about.
Right.
And so when I started writing novels, I thought, boy, there's a colorful group. And so I didn't use anyone in particular, but I made them up as I went along. And I've gone through the Italian mafia, the Irish mafia, the Russian mafia came into the second book frame up. And my main character, Michael Knight, when I was dreaming him up originally, I made him, wanted him to be able to play in two sandboxes, so I made him half white and half Latino. And the Latino happened to be Puerto Rican. His mother is full-blooded Puerto Rican. And I thought, I've been neglecting those folks, and I really should give them equal time.
Yeah.
And the subject matter lent itself to using them.
Now, the lawyers that you've had in each of your novels
Right.
tend to be like the same ones, is that correct?
Always,
Yeah.
yes.
And why is that?
Because I love them. When I first decided to write a novel, the three parts of a novel, right? Character, plot, and setting. All right, start with character, because nothing is more important to the book than character. You can have a good plot, yes. You can have an interesting setting, but without characters that people care about, it's going to die.
Yeah.
So I started there, and I started building the have you ever been by the Build-A-Bear shop in the King of Prussia? This is where little kids come in, and they pick out the form of bear, and then they can stuff it and dress it. They walk out with a little doll. It's a bear. Well, that's what I was doing with a character. I was building him from the ground up. And I started by making him both Caucasian and Puerto Rican. Made him about 27 years old. That'd give him enough experience so he could do the things I wanted him to do, and so on. But then I matched him with an old-timer, tough, really tough old lion of the criminal defense bar. All of it takes place in Boston, which I love and know well. Our first 30 years were in Boston. And then the problem was getting those two together. But yes, after 5 novels, they are like members of the family. I think we set a place at the table for them for dinner.
How did you come upon the illegal trade related to endangered wild animals? It came about this way, Lou. It's time to write the 5th novel. All right, I had recovered from writing the 4th one and all of the publicity and the talks and the travel and all that. I'd recovered enough to start on this. Yeah, but what's it going to be about? I knew the characters, but how am I going to mess up their lives this time? And ideas float in and out, but it's got to be a grabber, or I'm going to bore myself silly because I spent 2 intense years researching and writing it. All of a sudden, I came across an article. It was buried on the 5th page of the Inquirer. It was about this fellow who was coming into the country. He was coming up from South America, and he was coming through customs, like 1,000 other people. Nothing unusual, could have floated right by. Customs agent saw something unusual, and he told him, roll up your pants legs. And when this guy rolled up his pants legs, he had 44 wild birds taped up and strapped to his legs. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what I said. And then after I said that, I said 2 things, 2 questions. Why in the world would anybody do that? And number 2, how did those birds survive it? And so that started me into some research, and the deeper I got into it, Lou, this is what really knocked me off the chair. I discovered, this is the tip of the iceberg, I had happened into what is the 2nd most profitable, most common, most destructive activity of all of the organized crime gangs of the world, and unfortunately the terrorist organizations of the world. It is a tremendously profitable business, and it is so far below the radar of most of us, nobody knows what's happening, and therefore nobody cares. And what it is it's the capture and the smuggling and the sale of endangered species of wild animals.
Yeah. I want to stop there, but I want to come back to this because it's really, really fascinating.
Good.
So we're going to take a break for commercial, John. Please stay with us. We're going to take a break for commercial, and we're going to hear more from John Dobbin about fatal odds. Stay with us.
We live in a world of banks that are too big to fail. Small banks are acquired by mega banks, and then you and your money are stuck in the middle. But it's different here. At Phoenixville Federal, we are the last community bank standing. We have over 100 years experience investing in this community, and we truly care about what happens in our town. So when you do your banking with us, your dollars are helping to grow our local economy, because we invest in local businesses and families that make up this great community.
Hi, welcome back. For those of you who are just joining in, we have the pleasure today of talking with John Dobbin, a local author who is actually getting very famous about his crime novels. And the latest one is about fatal odds, and we're talking with John about that. So, John, when we broke for commercial, you were talking about the essence of the illegal trade related to unique and endangered species of animals. Tell us a little bit more about that. It sounds like it's a tremendous underground economy that we don't even know about.
We really don't, Lou. And that's the secret of success for these people. Originally, it started with individual trappers and smugglers and so on. And the real source of endangered, and it's always endangered, wild animals that they're interested in, because the closer to extinction, the higher the price when they're sold. When it was individuals, smugglers and so on, it was bad enough. But the organized crime gangs caught on to it. You and I don't know about it, but believe me, they do. And they got into it in a heavy way. 10 years ago, it was a $5 billion industry. 10 years later, it's a $20 billion industry, and it is growing faster than any other form of crime, and it's because you and I and most people, it's under our radar. We're just not aware of what's cooking. They are making so much profit that originally the number 1 crime in the world is drugs, of course. Number 2 used to be arms dealing, illegal arms dealing, supplying arms to both sides of every war in the world. Third was this animal smuggling, but today it has eclipsed arms dealing, and it is number 2. Wow. And the reason the gangs are going to it is because it is not only more profitable than drugs, more profitable. A pound, for example, a pound of the crushed horn of a rhinoceros is worth more in weight than cocaine, heroin, gold.
Wow.
And it is safer. It's not only more profitable than dealing drugs, it is safer. Because none of us really are aware of it,
Yeah.
there are virtually no laws against it. And those that there are not enforced. The customs agents, forgive me for this, but they're easily bribable because there's no stigma to this crime. And so the result is that the organized crime gangs have if they are caught, and they never are, the fine is so minimal that it's barely a cost of doing
worth
business.
It, yeah. One of the things I found fascinating and interesting about the book when I was reading it is it seemed like a collaboration of two different cultures of organized crime, the Italian mafia and the Hispanic mafia.
Yes.
How did that come about? Or does that really happen in real life?
That's interesting. To tell you the truth, I've never actually come across a collaboration between these two, because at the beginning of the book, you might remember that the district attorney sees a collaboration between the Italian mafia in Boston and these Puerto Rican, and they've never gotten together on anything before, which leads him to believe there's something deeper to this. It starts with a fixed horse race at Suffolk Downs.
Yeah.
Something more to this than fixing a horse race. Part of the reason that I put the two together was I really wanted to get into these two Puerto Rican crime gangs. These are two actual crime gangs, the Nietas and the other one that they refer to as the Insectos. These are actual gangs. They began in Puerto Rican prisons. The Nietas began basically to protect prisoners, weak prisoners, against the guards and against the gangs in prison. They grew enormously. Some of their members were out of control, so they expelled them. And they're the ones that became the rival gang, the Insectos. But those are both actual gangs. Now they've been imported into the mainland,
Right.
and there are well over 6,000 members up and down the East Coast. And they're very active now on the mainland.
One of the things that also struck me was, I don't know, it was on your book jacket or whatever, but it was mentioned that one of the reasons why you like to write about organized crime in these different cultures is to actually educate the general public about the fact.
Yes.
And with your own legal background, you're able to actually develop those a little bit more. So it's really, you're providing a public service as well as just writing novels.
Actually, that's deliberate, Lou. Thank you for saying that. But it was deliberate. When after reading about this fellow who came in with the birds taped, and then doing some research, and then I discussed it with my wife. This is an incredibly destructive thing. I mean, dozens of species are becoming extinct every year because of this.
Yeah.
And they're importing diseases with these animals that are brought in with no control and so on. Nobody seems to know about this, and therefore nobody's doing anything even to slow it up. And so we decided maybe the first step about doing something about this is informing the public, because right now there is no squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
There is no stigma to the crime, because who cares? They're just animals, you know.
Well, your novels are doing a great public service. John, one of the things that I thought was fascinating in your novel was you seem to have subplots, sub-stories. And
true.
Is that just your style, or is that pretty much the way novels are written in general?
I don't think there's any generality to it, Lou, and I'm not copying anybody. Actually, it just evolved sort of naturally. When I wrote the first novel, somebody actually described it as an onion, which I didn't take too well at the time, but then he explained what he meant. And that is, you see it, but as you peel back the layers, there are more and more, and you get deeper and deeper. So what you thought was going on here really isn't. You've got to get way inside until you find out what is really going on. And that's basically the reason that I think it gives it more depth and also provides a certain amount of suspense, and I can keep giving you surprises as we go along.
It does, and the way you just described that was exactly the feeling that I had
Really?
when I was reading it, because you're always coming back to something else. And the onion analogy is I think appropriate, because that's the way you're doing it. It's just kind of peeling the onion on it. So, well, John, we're out of time, but I want to thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
It's always a pleasure.
Always
to
a pleasure
interview
to
you.
do this with you.
You have an open invitation. Next time you have
Thank you.
another novel coming out, you'll be on the show.
I'm delighted to hear it. It's always
Thanks.
a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks very much. Well, that'll about do it for our show today, folks. We hope that you've enjoyed this edition of And Now You Know. We wanted to give you a bit of an inside look at the face of organized crime and to let you know that organized crime touches many different cultures and that the business of organized crime is varied and diverse. I think you'll agree that author John Dobbin has been a real fine guest and that his book will be a thriller when you read it. As always, we'd like to hear your suggestions about future shows. So, if you have an idea for a future show, please contact us either on Facebook or by email. Also, we'd like to very much hear your thoughts about the shows that we've already presented to you over the last several months. Your opinion means a lot to us. Lastly, you can watch this episode of And Now You Know on our new online community channel at foxypop.com. I'm Lou Beccaria, and now you know. This episode of And Now You Know has been sponsored by Tronix Security Systems.